Hello, welcome to my talk at Nordic Game Conference 2024 with the title From Unintentional Greenwashing in Games to Saving Whales, Climate Change in Games. My name is Michael Geidler, and I'll be guiding you through the next minutes of my talk. Basically about me, my name is Michael. I'm a founder and producer at Actrio Studio. We are involved in production, doing games, VR, AR, and also film. Strong narrative aspect, and I've been invited to numerous festivals to talk about, especially our topics of ecological and economical, social topics of our projects. Basically, when talking about climate change, you first might wonder, okay, so how many have actually heard about it? So there was a study in 2007 and 8 where there was conducted research that like nearly all of the population was above 50% aware of climate change. And the latest one in 2022 sees, as you can see, the dark blue is people who have never heard of it, and everything that's yellow and red is heard a lot or not so much, and but know a lot about it. In general, I would say. So the thing is, North America, Europe is pretty clear. South America and South West Asia, North Africa, a little bit more of the dark blue, but still not something where I would say, okay, wow, that's a lot of education needed about the awareness. Also in other parts, maybe Ghana, Tahiti, Cambodia have things to catch up on this. Also, they are being, very vulnerable to climate change effects. But it's nothing where I would say the problem is that people have never heard about climate change. Now, using mass media, everyone has heard about it. What they make of it is a different story, and how to react to it as well. That climate change is happening is widely accepted, as you can see on this map as well. So the question is really, if we know there's climate change and if we know it's happening, why don't we do anything about it, or not enough about it? So this is the billion-dollar question. Not an easy answer for that, but it is pretty clear. So most people know that climate change is happening and it's there, and so that can't be really the issue. So the question is really, so why don't we act accordingly enough? Meaning, it's a really the $1 billion question, and there's no really easy answer to it. The basic answer is climate change is really complicated. It's really hard to understand. It's a very long-term research thing, so you don't see the effects of whatever you change in the next couple of years. So it's really hard to say, okay, well, I did this, now I get this in return. That's something we gamers know is really important as well. That's why also games cannot really create a simulation of how climate change works in reality, because we look for easy and short-term solutions and goals. But one of the things that's really interesting is that all 30% of the video gamers say that they took already actions based on what they played in, or they checked in streams, and also they think that the gaming industry is very much responsible to address global warming and do something about it, and that's very much true. It's really important to say that the games that have really an impact are the games that are played by a lot of people, and most people try to only play fun games because it's in their spare time. It's in their time they do usually not work, or they can spend otherwise with other nice things, so they play games for fun. So it needs to be intrinsically motivated, needs to be informative but fun, and that's really complicated when it comes to climate change, because it really doesn't make sense to just simulate pure life on Earth. That would be pretty boring for most people. And also the pandemic and the overwhelming reality of threats we face every day nowadays is just has come with a new term that's really, the cozy games genre that's on the rise. People just don't want to be confronted with stressful situations. They need to decide about their real world. So it's not really something that is or was seen as a proper theme or a good seller to have the topic of climate change in your. But the problem is, of course, when do we cross the line of greenwashing? Do we keep being realistic or not? Because keeping realistic is maybe too boring. If you're going too much into fantasy, it's maybe greenwashing. There is the need of fantasy. We want to escape. We want to be Superman. We want to have superpowers. We want to be someone else. We want to escape into fantasy worlds. So there's the problem of this. Then we have the other problem. There's not enough climate scientists who are also willing to spend a lot of their time into teaching us game designers how to make a good game, or not how to make a good game we know, but how to put well enough climate science into the game that it is having an impact on people with the real science. Then the lack of resources to make, internal resources, be it, writers, game designers capable of learning and educating themselves and, creating input for making a game, a climate science game that has an impact. Again, the complexity is one of the biggest problems, and we are looking at this in our examples I'll be showing later. Basic principle is there's no magic bullet. It's really complicated, even without games, to communicate climate science in a transparent and good way that really has an impact. With games, not easier. So who do you trust? How do you, if you don't have, the number of your favorite climate scientists at hand and who wants to help you, what do you do? There's great resources out there. There's great people who've gone through the path of creating climate science related games. So there's the IGDA Climate SIG, who has a great Discord who you can join, and they have great resources, as well as Playing for the Planet, a rather new initiative backed by the UN, which has the same goal of becoming better in communicating climate change in games. Now to the examples. First of all, we want to look at a quite old game, let's say. The original Sim City had, as a fun fact, had no parking lots in the game. So you were not able to really recreate what a US city back then, and a lot of cities still now, look like. Lots of parking lots. They found it boring that you need to build parking lots. So they put just they assumed that all the cars would be parking under the surface, so you don't see them. What would have happened if SimCity would have presented the real harsh reality of so many parking lots? Well, I guess maybe the game wouldn't have, skyrocketed, or people would have been realizing, how many cars are actually in their city taking up valuable space. Okay, this has changed. Now we're talking about car-free cities and stuff. But another thing that's interesting is the SimCity Edu Pollution Challenge was created 2013 as a purely educational for classroom experience, which is unfortunately, it seems discontinued. Please, if someone from EA watches this, please remove the SimCityAU.org link from your newsletters because it doesn't work anymore and leads to a quite different website. The latest SimCity 5, the expansion pack, Cities of Tomorrow, then has actually a quite nice trailer. You really have to watch it. It's the perfect thing between evil and good, the green good people and the evil bad people. So there is a lot of greenwashing criticism in it, but it also makes everything a little too easy. It's just this black and white, which is not reality, unfortunately, not in ecology, not in economy, but it's a great trailer, nevertheless. Now we go to Sims 4, which started out as a spin-off from SimCity, and it's been praised for having an expansion pack for eco lifestyle. And you can see that's one of the reasons people are willing to spend money on, for example, expansion packs for eco lifestyle, so they can live their eco lifestyle. But also because there's also a target group for this, you can get famous in an expansion pack, which you also find people to pay for, and therefore it is great to have the eco lifestyle pack, and you can see that it is monetizable, let's say, but at the same time having contradictory messages and expansion packs and values inside of one game doesn't really help to get just one message across and the urge for action. Another great example is the Anno series. If you look at Anno 2070, where I also had the chance to have a look behind the scenes when it was done, consulting on climate change efforts, it's pretty clear it's a super high-end, society, and its climate change is something that you can have under control, which is, an interesting thing to say that it's so easy to have under control. And if you look at Anno 1800, it's really about industrialization. And if it's a historic thing about industrialization, you have to have coal, you have to have oil. That's what ruled. But still, in the Green Game Jam in 2001, which they won with a scenario to create it within then, and I was also part of the Green Game Jam at that time, they created a scenario which is called Eden Burning, which is like separate to the game. It's just a scenario, but they created something that's very different to the Anno series, which means that they have an easy to fail thing. They created something that's called, an eco balance as a new core mechanic, which means if your society, if your environment was out of eco balance, the environment hits back, and that's a great tool. And we have Fate of the World, which is pure realism. If you think about having, climate science prediction included in the game in a depth in so much that even the critics said that it is too much information. It's really not well explained, and it's really hard to play and cruel. Well, reality is hard to play and cruel, and it is just too much information. Maybe that's one of the reasons why this game wasn't so super successful. So here is an example of a game that really took it right, as in, as it was said in the trailer, the world has ignored the threat of climate change, and then conflicts of it are real bit reality, and it have DLCs like tipping point, migration, denial. All of these topics are like in our news, but they're too hard. It's not cozy. It's really also very hard to solve. And so maybe that's one of the reasons why it was successful, but it didn't reach as many players as The Sims, for example, obviously. Another thing that's really interesting to see is Terranil. It's a rather new game, and it just goes the other way around. It's a city builder in reverse, and it really says, okay, well, you know, we start with the desert, and we want to flourish life, and it's just about nature. It's not about us in nature. It's not being sustainable in a city. It's just about flourishing life, and us, having fun with it, enjoying it. On the flip side of the coin is, how do you actually achieve that in the game? You have things like a toxin scrubber, things that don't exist yet and might not be existed, or at least they are very much criticized by scientists for trying to show solutions that are really impossible or really hard to make, so that it's not really like a one button fix that you can do to the environment. And that's really not a good way to say that there would be, because that would just mean we don't need to do anything. Just in the last minute, we push the button, everything will be all right. That's just not how climate change works. Minecraft, everyone knows Minecraft, so that's another really good example, I think, as you can learn within Minecraft math, chemistry, coding, but you can also learn about sustainability and resilience. And the Adrian Arsht Rockefeller Foundation Resilience Center, the Arsht Rock, they have a claim like they want to educate 1 billion people and make them resilient to climate change by 2030, which is like a really great goal. And by that, they want to reach it, including also games. So they created the Build Challenge together with Minecraft, and they want to, create resilience know-how within communities with Power Grid Hero Game Mode or with the Heatwave Survival minigame, which both are addressing important issues that come with climate change and sustainability change. Factorio is another example I want to bring up because it is from the narrative, let's say, not that easy when you really look at it from the side that like a human crash lands on a planet and then gets all the resources from that planet against the will of the inhabitants of the planet to flee the planet. even if those are are just aliens and they are to be held back from the progress of your mining that destroys their nature. So that's really a conflict. Probably was not the idea of the game makers to use such metaphors that are really contradictory to beliefs of scientists and what should be taught about climate change. But even if you try to do an eco run, so you use less coal, you use or no coal, you go to solar, you do all in research, and you don't build weapons, because if you're really happy and you don't waste too much of the planet of the aliens, they won't attack you. But it's a much harder game, and in this respect, it is quite realistic because it's much harder to be sustainable than just using coal on the short term, at least, when you don't see the results of your doing by the climate change effects. Then we have Beyond Blue, which is also a great game, which was labeled educational game. It still was very successful, inspired by the BBC's Blue Planet television series. And it's funny enough, it's educational just because maybe it was called educational. Critics say that the ocean was not realistic, it was too empty, and it was, I don't know why, but the real oceans are pretty empty. Even, healthy oceans are pretty empty, big spaces. And being abstract and a little bit more fantasy when it comes to the graphics is something very well accepted with other games. But if you call it educational, it's not accepted anymore. That's a strange thing to say. Then we have Alba, Wild Adventure, by a very well-known Astu Games, that is the makers of Monument Valley. And Jennifer Staris of Astu said that the game is about a child who loves birds, photography, and taking down the evil capitalist hotelier who is trying to destroy the local nature reserve, everyday life. That's a bit of sarcasm I hear here, but the game that was released 2020 is really about that. It's an open world, it's about cleanups, it's about taking action that you would hope to have also the chance to do in real life. Then we have Eco. That's a game in early access since February 28, which is really complex because it really is simulating an ecosystem in very complex details as a cooperative human experience, where you together have to decide and develop laws and government to survive in the end. And therefore, it's really great to play because fighting climate change, combating climate change is all about working together. Green Hell is something I just want to see here because it's about survival, and the title says Green Hell, but it's really not. Somehow it is, but it's really about surviving and working together in nature, surviving in nature, using nature, and learning a lot about it as well on the way. This is a little bit of an excursus, I have to say, because it's not directly linked to climate change, but I just, because it's a great example, Borderlands 3 created together with the McGill University people in Canada a science citizen game inside of Borderlands 3 to help real scientists problems. And as you can see, gamers can be very good in solving puzzles, and they are very active, and there are lots of them. So they solved, 4 million participants, 135 million puzzles in a challenge that would never, without them, would have gone so far, because they collected just in launch day 5 times more data than the project itself, the science project, did in 10 years, which is amazing. Now, coming back to also real life impact, maybe not for scientists, maybe just for the environment. That's the most important thing. We have the Great Ocean. Disclaimer, this is a game that we have released and continue working on together with the Whale and Dolphin Conservation Society, which is an NGO. And we are donating parts of the revenue and of the in-app purchases towards this real work. Pokemon Go had a tree planting initiative, which was great because it had like double sense. It made you move, and for every 5 kilometers you moved, they planted a tree together with Ecosia, and they planted 301,000 trees, which is totally amazing. And then we have something else, which is the Riders Republic game, and they did an in-game demonstration. We know demonstrations from the streets, but they did an in-game demonstration, a climate demonstration inside of the game by the players, which I think is a great virtual step to see also that gamers can be mobilized for such causes. And then we have a little bit that goes more into a rebellious, because we can't just stay and try to advance 1%, 2% each year. Just have no time for that. So the question really is back to the first slides. Does playing green games, really good green games that have great call to actions and they tell us a lot about what we should be doing, make just by playing, do we become climate advocates? Do we go and try to influence politicians and lobby against businesses that do not behave climate friendly? Or is it like similar, like research shows that do so-called shooter games make us aggressive? There is not enough research actually to say that actually just playing climate games make us into climate advocates. But let's very much hope that we learn a lot by that and that we can transform this knowledge into action. Because, yeah, we see it every day, how in the news this affects us. And it's a knowledge and hope situation in a way, because there's lots of dystopian games where everything's destroyed and then we have to build up, or maybe it's just part of it that it's destroyed and we have to survive. But isn't, like, as you can see in Horizon Zero Dawn, Forbidden West isn't looking at like a sea level rise, San Francisco, trying us to prevent this situation? I mean, that'd be something I'd love to see. On another note, the hardware and the software and the distribution of games is just spending so much energy and creating so much CO2 emissions that, because it's the biggest entertainment industry in the world, which is natural, that cutting down and not playing at all would be the best thing to do. Is that it? So just having no games at all, not playing, me not having this talk, not going to conferences, is that really the solution? Well, climate scientists go to a lot of conferences because they think that their impact, and that's true, should be much higher than actually the CO2 they create flying to the conference. And that's also the hope for here, that by continue playing green games, we can make a higher impact. Of course, there is a lot of voluntary and big corporations like Sony and Ubisoft. They commit to green goals and they want to be net zero and all that. But we really have no time for any postponing of that. We really have to be faster. Very fast is also reducing CO2 in games. So Kara Stone created a game that was just also at Amaze in Berlin, that she created only, with very, reduced size. She created her own self-made web server that is solar powered and therefore doesn't work 24/7. And it's a game that might not, surprise, everyone, that it is not high graphics and not very long and all that, but it is addressing the situation that also game have CO2 impact. And a very low impact and a very good and effective kind of game is, of course, board games. And Matt, the creator of Pandemic, which is a highly successful game about the COVID pandemic, created a cooperative game, a board game, Daybreak. And in 2 hours, you can play just, with non-electricity in a board game environment, how to stop climate change or failing with it. And they don't even create plastic packaging and all of that. So that's very climate friendly. Yeah, lastly, I want to thank everyone who has been on this mission for a long or for a short time, be it the members of the IGDA, Climate SIG, Ben Abraham, Great Resource, also playing for the planet. Arsh Truck, obviously a very big mission to do. Games for Change, Unit for Good, Made for Good, and Project Daughter and Report, and everyone else who is a game designer and a game director and just someone who is supporting this mission.